Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies, and Roki Sasaki is signed with the Dodgers. Shocker. I'm going to tell you why this is not only bad for the Phillies, but it might be bad for baseball. We'll break it down on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been doing Philadelphia Sports Talk Radio for 5 years over at 97.5 The Fanatic here in Philly. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 3 years, and this is my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure that if you're listening to this in podcast form, you're rating and reviewing wherever you get your podcasts. We're available. Check out the YouTube channel, Locked On Phillies. Hit that subscribe button when you do. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's a great way to help us out here on Locked On Phillies, and it'll get you notifications when, did I just say that, when new episodes are posted? Yes, it'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted, if I haven't said that already. Definitely subscribe so you can keep up to date with all the big stuff happening with the Phillies and around baseball, because we've got some big-time baseball news to get into about the Dodgers today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets. If you win your first bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. So the big news in baseball, Roki Sasaki is signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers in the least shocking move of all time, unless you're a Toronto Blue Jays fan. We're going to talk about that first. We're also going to talk about some pitching for the Philadelphia Phillies. Zack Wheeler was number 1 in the MLB's top 10 pitchers right now list that MLB Network puts out, and the Phillies also made an interesting move that kind of couples with the Sasaki news pretty interestingly. And we're also going to take some time at the end of the show to remember one of the great voices in the history of baseball, one of the great personalities in the history of baseball, the great Bob Uecker, who passed away this week. But let's start with the Sasaki thing, because this is nuts, right? It's absolutely crazy. Now, it should have been expected, and it pretty much was expected. Every time we talked about Sasaki, the Dodgers were one of the first teams we mentioned. They'd been in talks with him the whole time he'd been posted, and he has announced that he was signing. Now, if you'll remember from what we talked about, would the Phillies potentially be interested in Roki Sasaki, is that signing him because of his age and him not having enough service time in Japan to qualify for a true free agency contract, he would be signed to a minor league deal, which means very, very minimal dollar commitment by the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, once that time comes up, he will become a free agent. And if the Dodgers do not sign him to like some kind of extension before that, then you're going to see him test free agency. So it's not like he's going to be there for the next 20,000 years like Shohei Ohtani is. But the fact that they got a potentially incredibly talented pitcher at the major league level and 23-year-old Sasaki for peanuts, and add him to a rotation that already has guys like Tyler Glasnow, Tyler Glasnow and Yoshinobu Yamamoto, and all of these guys that are just flat out nasty for the Los Angeles Dodgers in that rotation. Like, you're seeing a super team get built. And it's bad for the Phillies first and foremost, right? This is Locked On Phillies, so we're going to start with that. I'm also going to talk to you about why I think it's bad for baseball. But it's bad for the Phillies in that the National League just gets tougher, man. The Dodgers have had an outstanding offseason, getting the guys back they need to, adding guys that they wanted to. Like, they are coming off a World Series victory that was a pretty comfortable one over the New York Yankees, and they have upgraded on top of what was already a super team. Like, they're unbelievable. Remember, Shohei Ohtani isn't even pitching yet. At some point in the near future, next year or two, Shohei Ohtani is going to step back on the mound. And then that team, I don't know, you add a Cy Young candidate to that team and that rotate. Like, it's bad for the Phillies, because this is the team you have to go through to get to the World Series. You are going to have to knock this team off if you want to play in the Fall Classic. And that just got even harder with the Roki Sasaki news. I mean, they were already going to be a tough out, but every player that they add, it makes the job that much tougher for the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm not saying the Phillies have no chance. I'm not saying the season is over. I'm not saying there's no point of competing. Like, no, you can knock off any team. We see great teams go out all the time. But have we seen a team this great in a while? Probably not, since those like early 2000s Yankees teams that were just throwing crazy money at everybody. We haven't really seen a team that's done it this way. The Astros found their way to their mini dynasty with trash cans, but also with really good drafting and evaluating of talent and building from a point of inferiority. Had a lot of draft picks, had a lot of capital in the minor leagues. They really developed guys well. But this is the first team, the Los Angeles Dodgers, since the Yankees did it in like the Steinbrenner heyday for this Steinbrenner, like looking at, well, hey, we're going to just throw money at guys and we're going to build a super team. And then all these free agents are going to want to pay for us. But this is why it's bad for baseball, right? Obviously, it's bad for the Phillies. This is not good news for the Philadelphia Phillies. Your road to a World Series just got tougher with this signing. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Would have rather seen him go to Toronto. Would have rather seen him go anywhere else, Roki Sasaki, than the Dodgers. But he's a free agent and he gets his pick. But here's why, like, again, this is bad for baseball. And I know there are going to be people that hear me make this argument and say, "Wow, you're crying, loser mentality," or the Phillies have an insane payroll. They're throwing money at people. How can you complain from the point that you're at? My first point, before I get too deep into this is not about payroll, right? This is not about guys going out. I think Steve Cohen, the manager, the owner of the New York Mets, is great for baseball because that dude is going to spend his money where he wants to. That's why Juan Soto is a member of the New York Mets and not the New York Yankees. But Steve Cohen is great for baseball because he's not going to cry poor. He's the owner of the team. He makes the money. He invests it back into the team. And he says, okay, we're going to put a good product on the field for the fans. That's what owners should try to do, especially in major market teams. I understand if you're Tampa Bay or something, like it's not, you can't do that, but you can at least try to do that. And I respect owners spending money. There is no salary cap. There is a luxury tax that owners have just said, screw it at this point. And some do go well into the penalty threshold for that. That's okay, because that is well allowed within the sport. And that's more of a who wants it more type of thing for the major market teams. I'm talking in the vein of a Philadelphia Phillies fan, right? Someone who has a team that has a major market payroll. Like, that's an even playing field. What's not an even playing field is when you start having contracts like Shohei Ohtani and all this deferred money with the Los Angeles Dodgers to say, okay, well, it's not going to count, so you can go sign all these other players. I'm going to take an incredibly tax-friendly deal for the luxury tax to make this as easy for the Dodgers to build around me. A guy like Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who's looking at a team like Toronto, where he could have been a star in Toronto, and now he just goes and he joins this super team in LA. It's the players taking pay cuts or the players that are on minimal salaries that are just choosing to go to LA, right? Like, there's no competition. There's no, hey, well, the Blue Jays offer me more money, so I'm going to go there. The Phillies offer me more money, so I'm going to go there. The Yankees offer me more money, so I'm going to go there. It's guys choosing to not take the hard route. This is like the NBA when people all got mad at LeBron and Bosh and Wade for teaming up in Miami. The only difference is NBA has a salary cap. There's a limit on max contracts that you could have on a team together. There is natural restriction to you building this super team where every player is an all-star. Baseball doesn't have that. So the only balance that keeps you competitive versus a team like the Dodgers is the idea that, like, okay, well, I don't know, other teams are going to either commit more based on the salary tax or the luxury tax threshold that LA doesn't want to pay. And now that's going out the window because owners are paying the luxury tax more and more, at least these big market owners. And, well, players don't want to just all go play on the same team for the integrity of the sport. Just looking at that, I don't know who needs to step in. I don't know what needs to be done. There are three parties. Either one, the commissioner needs to say something like, yo, we can't have all these guys on these team-friendly deals all going to LA, all playing for the Dodgers, all creating this super team, creating an unfair competitive advantage for the Dodgers. Can't happen. Or the owners need to step in and figure out, like, hey, we need a new system, because ultimately the owners hold the power. The commissioner works for the owners. The owners are the ones who make these decisions. They need to step in and say, all right, gone too far. Maybe we need to do this. Maybe we need to institute a salary cap for our league. Maybe we need to change the way that we approach free agency and the rules with that. Something of that matter. Or the third party is the players need to sack up and say, yo, I'm not just going to play in LA because, Well, Shohei's there, and Freddie Freeman's there, and Mookie Betts is there, and this crazy rotation's there, and they've won a World Series, and it's LA and it's Hollywood. Like, I get it. You know what? If I was playing professional sports, I would have teams that I would prefer over other ones too, and I would want to play for a winner, so I get that. But at some point, there needs to be some checks and balances so that every player doesn't just end up on the best team because they want to create this super mega all-star team that nobody can compete with. And it's not because other owners are not paying players. It's because players are turning that down and saying, nope, I know you're going to pay me, but I'm going to go here instead. Like that it ruins the competitive balance of the sport to me. And that annoys me because I don't want to see baseball turn into this top heavy. There's two teams that can win it every year and nobody else matters. And it already kind of is like that with the major markets and small markets. And that's on the owners. And that's on us not being able to see their books. There are a lot of issues with the way that baseball is currently run. Right. And I love the sport. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying don't watch baseball. I'm not saying this sport sucks. I'm saying that we are on a path. And what the Dodgers are doing is one of the latest threats to the path of ruining the competitive integrity of Major League Baseball. And that might sound dramatic. It is not. We are on that path now with the way that some of these things are happening, some of these deals are happening, and the Dodgers just happen to be the face of it right now. And guess what? If you're a Dodgers fan, you should be incredibly excited. And you should be watching this saying, screw this dude. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'll take my rings, because I'd be doing that if I was a Phillies fan. But from the outside looking in, you can see how this sets a dangerous precedent for the way that teams are going to be built going forward. Or rather, the way the Dodgers are going to continue to be built during the Shohei Ohtani era. And if you're just going to get every Japanese star, and you're going to get every marquee free agent, or you're going to get most of them, or you're going to get enough every year that you never truly have to rebuild, and it's just because they want to play for the clear winners, that's not good for the sport, guys. And this is not me saying, well, it makes the Phillies' path tougher. This is me on behalf of the other 29 teams in baseball saying, is this really going to be fun if it plays out the way it looks like it's going to based on skill level of that Dodgers team? Is it really good for, like, at some point, this is why NBA has anti-tanking and they have the lottery. It's why baseball has gone to a lottery system. It's why hockey has always had the lottery system, because there have to be sometimes self-imposed rules and regulations to keep the competitive level of the sport where it should be, because this is entertainment. It's a product that the fans are going to have to watch. I'll tell you right now, I don't think a lot of fans are excited about the prospect of the Dodgers going out and winning like 115 games and nobody can compete with them. It's not, again, I'll say it one more time. I don't think it's good for the sport. You can call me a crybaby for saying, oh, well, you're just mad that the Dodgers have had more success signing players and they're won a World Series and the Phillies haven't done that. Cool, I got it. It's not about payroll. It's about competitive integrity. And I think we're in a dangerous place in Major League Baseball with that. And Roki Sasaki signing with the Dodgers is one of the latest examples of it. That is all I will say on that. But coming up next, we will talk about Zack Wheeler having a good spot in the rankings. Well, the top spot in the rankings from MLB Network on top starting pitchers right now. And also, we got a little bit of news for the Phillies when it comes to a Japanese pitcher joining the squad, or at least joining the organization. We'll discuss that coming up as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. All right, let's talk about Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions that you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? Because that definitely happened to me last year, all right? I had so many things. Dude, I had a gym membership, no joke, like 7 months. Hadn't even gone. I got a gym in my apartment building. You just don't think about it, you're right? You're like, I'm working out, so I guess I'm not spending money on another gym. And then something pops up and you remember and you're like, oh man, how much money did I lose on that? Or a subscription service where you wanted to watch one game, right? You wanted to watch one thing on a streaming service, and next thing you know, you're paying for that for the next 5 months because you just forgot. Who knows? All this stuff happens. Rocket Money can help you figure that out. They're a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users, has saved a total of over 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So go ahead and check it out. I mean, there's a lot of great things to money manage on Rocket Money. It's a must-have to make sure you're taking care of your personal finances. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon so they know we sent you. rocketmoney.com FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, so let's start with the Zack Wheeler stuff here because this is nice. We talked about Brandon Marsh being the number 6, according to the MLB Network, because they're coming out with all these position rankings because it's the middle of the offseason, they don't have anything better to do. And guess what? We don't have anything too much better to do than to react to them. But it's interesting to see the national perspective or a couple of national baseball reporters' perspectives on where these guys rank and where Phillies players are. It's also a nice reminder that you do have a really talented baseball team here in South Philadelphia. But we talked about previously how Brandon Marsh was number 6 in center fielders currently playing Major League Baseball in the MLB Network's top 10 center fielders list. And that was remarkable because, one, I don't think Brandon Marsh is a top 6 center fielder. Like, just the gut feeling for that is like, he's not. But you look at some of the names on the list and you say, wow, the center field position, very light when it comes to that star level talent right now. The starting pitching position, not light at all. Very rarely is it ever because there's 5 on every team. So 5 times 30, not a math guy. I think that's 150, maybe. I'm not really. Please tell me that's right, because if I got that one wrong, I'm going to be an idiot. We got a math break here on Locked On Phillies. 5 times 30 equals, bang, 150. That's right. One of my New Year's resolutions, be better at math. But there's 150 of them, so there's bound to be talent all the time when it comes to starting pitching, and it's a really good time for starting pitching. Think about the guys that are out there, like Tariq Skubal, and you've got Paul Skeens bursting on the scene. You've got, when he's ready to pitch, Shohei Ohtani, who's not really on this list because he's not pitching right now. You got guys like Garrett Cole, that's a little bit more of the elder statesman. You got all these dudes that are monster arms. I can't possibly list all of them. It seems like every team that's competitive has not just an ace, but like 2 guys that could be a 1, right? It's wild. So when the MLB Network put together their list of top 10 pitchers in Major League Baseball right now, I expected Zack Wheeler to be on there. Did not expect him to be number 1. That is flat out incredible. I mean, that is something that you should feel really good about if you're a Philadelphia Phillies fan. And I know it's just this arbitrary list in the middle of the offseason. There's no, oh, he wins this award for that. He doesn't get like a retroactive Cy Young over Chris Sale, who, by the way, totally deserved it. I made a tongue-in-cheek argument that Zack Wheeler should have been the Cy Young winner in the National League, but come on, that was Chris Sale all the way. It would be almost as silly as Nick Castellanos saying Jose Iglesias should have been the NL MVP over Shohei Ohtani this past year. But no, like Chris Sale deserving. So it's funny that after that year that Chris Sale had, Zack Wheeler is the guy that they went with. All the great hurlers you have in the American League, it was Zack Wheeler. Number 1. So part of that is projection. Part of that is understanding where he's at right now. Part of that is the postseason and the ability to show up when it matters most. I mean, Zack Wheeler was unbelievable in the postseason for the Philadelphia Phillies. Unfortunately, didn't get as many opportunities as he probably would have hoped if the Phillies would have advanced a little bit further. Don't need to bring up the scars of the past, but that's a really good reminder that there are people out there that are not Philadelphia Phillies fans, that are unbiased national reporters that believe the Philadelphia Phillies have the best pitcher on the face of the planet when it comes to starting pitching. That's a really, really important thing, because what that says to me is if you get into the postseason, which the Phillies should, they should continue to be a postseason team year in and year out as long as they have this talent level of a roster. If Zack Wheeler gets the ball, you got the arm. You got the guy. You got the unstoppable force. And I know you might say, well, the Mets won game 1 with Wheeler on the mound. It wasn't on Wheeler when the Phillies lost that game 1 this past year. I mean, you could still lose those games, but to say anyone you go up against, our number 1 is better than your number 1, that is a huge asset in the race for a World Series. So you should feel darn good about that. And something else that has become a race recently around Major League Baseball is the race for these Japanese stars that come over from the NPL. Well, the Phillies did something interesting. So we've talked when Yoshinobu Yamamoto came up, when Roki Sasaki came up, and these guys were trying to figure out where they were going to play. The argument for the Philadelphia Phillies was, hey, we're a competitive team. We got payroll. We're a major market. We're a great sports city. But A lot of these guys are West Coast centric. They're focused on playing for a West Coast team. The Dodgers have had Japanese professional baseball players that come over from over there and play for their team. And so that breeds you rooting for that team if you're growing up in Japan playing baseball. Like, you need to have Japanese players to get Japanese players, right? This seems to be the trend. Well, the Philadelphia Phillies went out and they signed Koyo Aoyagi, who is he's not Yoshinobu Yamamoto, he's not Roki Sasaki, but he's a guy that was with the Hanshin Tigers for 9 seasons. He's more of a veteran guy that's been around for a while, a 3.08 ERA in 154 outings, had 12 starts, 898 in the third inning. So he's probably going to be he's definitely going to be a bullpen guy if he does pitch at the major level. They signed him to a minor league contract. So he's coming right from the NPL, and he's going to find a way to try and NBL. Crazy that I got that wrong. But he's going to try and find a way into the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen at some point. He'll probably end up in AAA because he's on a minor league deal, but going to come to camp, going to get the opportunity to see what he's got. And this is a good thing because I'm not saying like the Phillies should just put this guy on the roster just because he comes from Japan and use him as like this piece to convince other Japanese baseball players. Like, no, you're a competitive team. You're not just going to put a guy on the team that doesn't deserve to be there for future signings of other Japanese stars. But if this guy, who's a talented pitcher, makes the roster somehow or appears at some point or carves out a nice little like minor league, major league, taxi squad type of career with the Philadelphia Phillies over a year or two, well, that could give you a little bit of like, hey, look at what happened with Aoyagi. We can go ahead and do that with you, maybe future potential star baseball player from Japan. So it is nice to see the Phillies like break into that market, even if it is in a smaller way than Roki Sasaki. So maybe this is building to say, hey, in the future, we got to be in play for some of these guys because we can't let the Dodgers get all of them. So the Phils are working on it. We'll see how that plays out. But an interesting little tidbit, and we saw kind of the breadcrumbs of that when they offered Yoshinobu Yamamoto a major deal last year that he turned down to go to, of course, the Dodgers. So they're trying. They're doing their best. They're making a concerted effort, which the Phillies haven't done in the past. Rome wasn't built in a day, all right? You got to start from the bottom. You got to work your way up. Sometime 10 years down the line, when this next great two-way Japanese star is going to hit 80 home runs and have a sub-1 ERA comes out, and it's like, who gets him? Maybe it'll be the Phillies more in play this time around. And maybe this will be the moment that we point back to as why. You never know. But these are the small moves that can become big moves. Coming up next, we got to take some time to remember a legend who unfortunately passed away this week, Bob Uecker, passing away. One of the great personalities and voices in the history of baseball. Man, I love this guy. And I got to take some time on the podcast. Any baseball podcast should take some time to talk about what Bob Uecker did for the sport. We will do it coming up next as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. All right, let's talk a little bit about FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting than they already are. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. You got football today. You got football tomorrow. You got the Birds playing. Birds taking on the Los Angeles Rams, and you've got the Birds at a 5.5, 6.5 point favorite. I think it's 6.5 right now on FanDuel. Go ahead and check that out because the Eagles won by 17 the last time they played the Los Angeles Rams. And this time it's at the link. Love that. A little weather coming in. Look at the under. All you got to do is bet $5. You win it, $300. You don't even have to play like the crazy. Bet money line on the Philadelphia Eagles. They're nearly a touchdown favorite. Or do it today with the Chiefs. There's so many great bets that you could take advantage of on FanDuel, not just for that promo, but going forward with props, parlays, teasers, futures, all of this great stuff. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the legend Bob Uecker, who unfortunately passed away this week. The longtime announcer for the Milwaukee Brewers, so you might not know this, a former professional baseball player himself. He played Major League Baseball himself, now obviously way, way back in the day. where most of you probably know Bob Uecker from, if you're around my age or maybe even a little bit older. You know him from the Major League movies. And he was just Harry Doyle was his character name, I believe. Like, there are guys, a lot of people have different personalities, different strokes for different folks, right? It takes all that to keep the world going around. So I'm not saying like there's one right way or wrong way to do it, but everybody has their preferences. And a lot of people loved like the late, great Vin Scully. They loved his ability to tell the story of the game of baseball when he was announcing, this is a very Dodgers-centric episode, but when he was announcing Los Angeles Dodgers games. Vin Scully was like this consummate professional that always did exactly what he was supposed to do in a way that nobody else could. On the other hand, Bob Uecker brought the humor into it. Now, he was a professional in the sense of the word that a baseball player is a professional, where sometimes you're sticking gum to the back of a guy's cleat and you're putting some like tape down there and lighting it on fire, or you're messing with guys and putting seeds in their hat or whatever you're doing. Like, Bob Uecker was the funny side of baseball. And that's the great thing about, like, I'm more of a humor guy myself. I'm not going to call myself funny because anyone who calls themselves funny probably isn't really that much. But I always gravitated more to the funny stuff than I did just like the stories of baseball. And that's just my personal preference. I'm not here to pit two legends against each other, but I say that to say this. Like, this dude was my cup of tea through and through. I loved the way that he approached it. It's why I love John Kruk so much on Phillies games, because this like out-of-pocket random nonsense that gets brought up either in the vein of baseball or outside the vein of baseball that kind of reminds you that, hey, it's the middle of summer. And this is fun. And you're at the ballpark or you're watching somewhere, you're listening on the radio, and you get the chance to just like laugh and not stress so much about it. It's a fun pastime to take you out of the day-to-day grind, and humor is a great way to do that. Nobody was better at that than Bob Uecker. So a long time with the Brewers, Major League, he had so many great lines, and he was a guy that, like, he wasn't faking funny. He wasn't just making up these stories. He wasn't acting in Major League when he was doing that. Like, yes, of course he was, but that was kind of the guy he was. And as much as baseball needs a guy like Vin Scully to do it professionally, baseball, I think, always needs guys like Bob Uecker to do it in a humorous, lighthearted way as well. And that's something that I don't know that anyone will ever be able to do it the way that he did. Some of the greatest lines in baseball movie history came from Bob Uecker, including Just a Bit Outside. And that's people will say that everywhere and not know where it's from and not know the movie and maybe not even be a baseball fan. But that's one of those things that transcends it because it was such a perfect line. Like, I'd say dynamite drop in, Donnie, all the time when I'm doing like radio stuff at the Fanatic. Like, I love some of those lines from Major League. I love those movies. And like, of all the interesting players that were in that movie, Bob Uecker was kind of like the thread work that held everything together with the story of those teams, those fictional teams. And to know that he did that in real life for the Brewers, and that he played ball, and that the players respected him so much because of how he played ball and knew like the life of a Major League Baseball player, and was able to portray that while also keeping you engaged in the game. Like, I'm gushing a lot because I consider myself someone who lives on the broadcast or the entertainment side of the sport. I'm not a player. I'm not totally a fan, even though I am a fan. These are the people that I want to say I look up to. I don't know that I could ever do even that job. I definitely couldn't do it to the level that Bob Uecker did it to. But it's still knowing what goes into covering a baseball team, announcing a baseball game, all of that stuff. It is miraculous what these guys do. So if you want to go back and watch Major League or Major League 2, I like the original better. And just remember the man that did such a great job of keeping America's pastime a pastime. It's not war. It's not violence. It's not fighting. It's not politics. It's baseball. And it's supposed to be fun. And sometimes it's really darn funny. And I don't think anybody understood that better than Bob Uecker. So a sad day for him passing away. Man, we've lost some legends this offseason, Ricky Henderson, now Uecker. And it's just like, I got to bring up the big ones, because as much as this is a Phillies podcast, it is also a baseball podcast. And anyone who does a baseball podcast and can't take the time to acknowledge the greats of the sport, both on the field and in the booth and around the team and everything like that, I think you're doing a disservice, and I'll never do that here on this show. That's all for today's episode. A reminder, we got Mailbag Monday again. On Monday, I'm going to put out a tweet from @LO_Phillies. Also, I'll retweet it from @ConnorThomas975, my personal account. You can respond with any question under the sun that's Philadelphia Phillies centric, or if you have questions about my take on the Dodgers and the Roki Sasaki thing, just anything we've covered on the podcast or anything we haven't covered about the Phillies that you want some information on, respond to that tweets, and I will go ahead and run through some of them on Monday. I'll try and get to all of them if I can. So we'll do Mailbag Monday on our Monday's episode. You got 2 days to get that in. Oh, by the way, go Birds. Can't end the episode without saying that. Big game for the Eagles. Check out Locked On Eagles, our friends over there. They'll be breaking down everything for Eagles Rams. A lot of stuff going on in Philadelphia right now. So make sure you hit Mailbag Monday. Make sure you rate, review, and subscribe. All that good stuff that I always tell you about. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll talk to you Monday on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.